Welcome to the AI Business News Desk. I'm Terry Sweeney, contributing editor to AI Business, and joining me now is Audi Rowe, America's Consulting, Transformation, Digital Strategy, and Experience Leader for EY. Audi, thanks so much for joining us on the news desk today.
Thanks for having me, Terry. Appreciate it.
Let's just kick us off with some thoughts around the main challenge for leaders that stands between AI investment and ROI. That can be quite a gulf in many instances, but help us understand that better.
Yeah, it's a great question, Terry. So when we think about AI from an investment perspective, I think what we've seen over the past, let's say, 12 to 14 months is what I would say boards telling C-suite and C-suite telling teams to do AI. And what I think that has led to is a proliferation of use cases and pilots and AI being advanced in a very siloed functional ways. In many cases, there's obviously the exceptions, and you see the headlines around where is AI creating value. And so we've been pondering this question as well at EY, and recently we've just released some thinking around, not only thinking, but accelerators around how do you take a step back and how do you really reimagine the way that you advance work. And so when we think about macro processes across organizations, so things like record to report, order to cash, we really take a step back and say, what are the outcomes that we're trying to drive? How do we reimagine that end-to-end process with AI as an enabler? And when we see clients leaning into really reimagining the way work is done with AI, that's where we really start to see the return on investment for what they're doing. It's where we see clients taking more of a siloed and a very fractured approach, is where clients are struggling to get value out of AI.
Sure. I mean, this idea, this directive of go do AI, I think is actually more common than we want to think it is. It also suggests a certain performativeness
Yep.
around how a line of business or an organization decides to dive into AI. Obviously, this is going to be a big impediment to ROI when you have such vague directives like that.
Agreed. And that's where I think we need to see leadership take a little bit of a different approach. Again, maybe step back for a second and think about how do you organize your workforce towards a common objective? How do you look at, and that's where we really look at processes because a lot of times they cross teams, they cross functional departments, and we say, okay, how do you reimagine and how do you get the organization aligned on a focus to really evolve the way that you serve your customers and the way that you advance your work.
Sure, sure. Um, we often talk about AI and efficiency. What are we missing when we pair those things together like that?
It's a great question. I actually I queried a GPT on the ride in today, and I said, "What is everybody's sentiment right now about AI?" Because you see so much of the headlines around cost takeout, and you see a lot of nervousness. And the summarized view was everybody is it's complex and it's divided. The response of everyone right now is really two camps of okay, there has been a lot of focus on efficiency, and I think that's because we were using the lens of how does our work advance today and thinking about how AI fits in more as a bolt on to what we do versus really building in AI and really, again, reimagining what we do. And so, from an efficiency perspective, I think we are seeing that shift now towards value creation. You saw a couple weeks, I think 2 days before Black Friday or the Thanksgiving holidays, you saw a lot of the companies pushing out and pushing towards commerce, and you continue to see the innovation with this technology, and we are seeing organizations say, what can we do? How can we unlock? What are the value unlocks that we can gain, not just from an efficiency play, but in an entirely new way of doing business?
Sure. And just for definition's sake, what are we talking about value-wise when we talk about quote unquote AI value? What does that mean?
So when I think about AI value, I think about how are you working differently? How are you not just doing things differently, but how are you doing different things? And so from a value perspective, with AI, I believe there's their opportunity to realize there are patterns across what you do as an organization that are very ripe for automation, that are ripe for being able to build workflows that are able to drive more in a continuous way and leverage agentic, leverage machine learning, leverage generative AI in the best use of them, and shift your workforce towards higher value activities. So things that require judgment, things that require thinking, innovation, things that require creativity, the human connection between your customer and your workforce. And so where I see the value that can be unlocked with AI is really using AI as a tool and using AI as an enabler to allow you to shift to greater value activities.
Okay, that's actually really helpful, especially as we consider like what are the factors that allow an AI investment to both scale and also create enterprise value. What are your thoughts there?
So when I think about scaling with AI and I think about creating enterprise value, one of the things that I focus on is it starts at the top. It has to be a leadership mandate, and leadership has to create the culture that leans in and embraces AI. And how do you encourage your teams not only to be educated and aware and using and learning, but keep up with it and collaborate and work differently, again, in this reimagining vein? So I think that it starts with culture, it starts with leadership sponsorship, and it starts with focus. And that's where I think if you can get those aspects clearly aligned, again, from the top down, you start to be able to shift into a new gear of what's possible with AI.
Right. The pace of change in AI is at breakneck speed, to say the least. It's changing so rapidly. Um, from your perspective, what should be the top of mind priorities for investment leaders and technology leaders these days?
So I would say be informed, lean in. We're all learning constantly. We're all eager to see, or many are eager to see what's the next thing. Be curious. What I would say though goes back to how are you thinking about the ecosystem in which you're operating? How are you reimagining the way that you're working? How are you using accelerators to move quickly? Who is developing something that can actually move you faster towards that value creation? I mentioned that we at EY on Monday, we launched our value blueprints, which is both a methodology as well as accelerators. They're templates. We've done the thinking. We've thought through these macro processes, and we've actually built out what those processes can be in the future and the role AI plays in enabling those. Great example of an accelerator that businesses can lean in and instead of starting on a blank whiteboard, actually start with the great thinking that's out there and things that can move you forward very quickly. So I think about what is the culture you're creating, what's the ecosystem that you're fostering, how are you leaning in and being curious, and how you're using accelerators to really reimagine work.
Thanks, Adi. Take us out with some thoughts around what companies can do to take advantage of AI's opportunities today.
So what companies can do to take advantage of AI's opportunities today, you know, first of all, it's very exciting. Nobody has an 8 ball, and we'll be looking back in 6 months or a year or a few years from now, and probably chuckling at as we try to all collectively understand the capabilities of this technology. And so, and I think about the parallels of when the smartphone came, we were all a little bit like, how are things going to change? And they did. And when the internet came before that,
Sure.
we were when you think about the boot up of a system, we were, there was skepticism at first. What is this going to do? Is going to be more harm than good? But it did fundamentally change how we all work and how we all connect as a global economy and a global marketplace. And so I think AI is no different. AI is here. It's not going away. So how do we really lean in and be curious? How do we push ourselves to, again, not just do things differently, but do different things. And that I would say just fostering that spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship and creativity is something that I think leaders should really embrace within their organizations in a responsible way with the right guardrails, of course. But being able to create that safety for your teams to explore, I think is paramount to being able to really shift into an AI native organization.
All right. Well, some great stuff, Adi. Really terrific insights on how to make make the most of the AI opportunities. Thanks so much for joining us on News Desk today.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate you having me.
We've been talking with Audi Rowe of EY. This has been Terry Sweeney for the AI Business News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this segment. We'll see you next time.